Officer Bradley Cole shoved Evelyn Carter, 73 years old, against the blistering hood of his patrol car, his hand forcing her neck down as though she were a criminal caught in the act. "On your knees, old lady. Now!" His partner, Marcus Hale, kicked her purse across the pavement, scattering her belongings, wallet, phone, ID card, and keys like debris. He ground his boot across her driver's license until the plastic bent. "This account has millions," Hale sneered, holding up the card. "No way it belongs to someone like you." Evelyn's cheek burned against the hot metal, her pearl earring glinting under the sun, but her voice held steady. "I've banked here longer than you've been alive." Around them, pedestrians stopped in shock, some with phones lifted, recording every second. The officers prepared the cuffs, unaware that inside Evelyn's purse a small emergency phone had already connected, broadcasting their every word. Someone powerful was listening. 30 minutes earlier, Evelyn had parked her modest silver sedan in front of First National Bank, adjusting her pearl earrings in the rearview mirror before stepping into the air-conditioned lobby. She looked every bit the retired schoolteacher she was. Pressed blouse, hair pinned neatly, dignity wrapped around her like armor. Today's errand was simple: withdraw $15,000 to cover her grandson Daniel's college tuition. Inside, the hum of polite chatter filled the marble-floored space. Customers were greeted warmly by tellers. Transactions moved smoothly, at least until Evelyn handed her slip to the young teller at the counter. Ryan Mills glanced at the amount, frowned, and then turned her ID over and over, squinting at her photo as if he expected it to fade. "That's a significant amount," he said, his tone heavy with suspicion. "Are you sure you understand what you're asking?" Evelyn raised her brows. "Young man, I've handled banking longer than you've had a driver's license." But Ryan didn't laugh. He waved over his manager, Susan Blake, who approached with folded arms and narrowed eyes. "There's a problem with your request," Susan declared. Evelyn asked what problem, and the answer came sharp. "We need to verify your identity further. Fraud prevention measures protect people like you." People like me. The sting of those words lodged deep. At the next window, a young white man withdrew nearly the same amount without delay or questions, while Evelyn was told to wait. Susan disappeared into a back office, clutching her ID, whispering to two security guards who kept looking at Evelyn as one place to call. Moments later, a police cruiser rolled up outside. Evelyn felt her pulse quicken. She remembered the gift her son had given her the previous Christmas, a special phone with a single red button. "If you're ever in danger, Mom, don't hesitate," he'd said. She had laughed at the time, never imagining danger would come at her own bank. The glass doors opened, and Officers Cole and Hale entered. Susan pointed straight at Evelyn. "Ma'am, step outside with us," Cole ordered, voice cold, hand hovering near his weapon. Evelyn held her ground. "I've done nothing wrong. I'm a customer withdrawing my own money." Hale leaned in, lowering his voice. "We can do this the easy way or make a scene. Your choice." Silence swallowed the lobby. Mothers clutched children. A man near the ATM raised his phone to film. Evelyn straightened her back and walked toward the door, dignity her only shield. In the parking lot, Cole changed his tone. "We've had several fraud cases involving elderly accounts," Evelyn replied evenly. "I'm withdrawing money for my grandson's tuition." She reached carefully into her purse. "I'm retrieving my passport." Hale's hand jerked toward his gun. "Hands where we can see them." Evelyn moved slowly, producing her passport, perfectly valid, which Hale snatched without a glance. "Could be fake, too," he muttered. "These scammers are good." Evelyn's patience thinned. "Call my son. He'll verify who I am." Cole smirked. "Everyone's got a son who'll fix everything." The officers demanded her purse. Evelyn refused, but Hale yanked it away, dumping its contents across the patrol car's hood. Lipstick, tissues, eyeglasses, wallet, all exposed. A framed photo of her late husband and grandson slid toward the edge. She reached instinctively. "Don't touch anything," Cole barked. The frame fell, shattering across the pavement. Evelyn's voice broke. "That's my family." Hale's response was cruel. "ID fraud's a family business now." Evelyn clasped her trembling hands together, refusing to let them see her shake. What they didn't realize was that the small phone buried deep in her purse had already done its job. A line was open. Every insult, every accusation, every act of humiliation was being transmitted in real time. Sirens wailed faintly, backup responding to a crime that didn't exist. Cole began stuffing her belongings into an evidence bag, but his radio suddenly crackled. A voice cut through, sharp and commanding. "This is Chief Reynolds. Do you have any idea who you're detaining?" Cole froze, the arrogance draining from his posture. Hale frowned, confused. Evelyn didn't smile. She only lifted her chin higher, pearls catching the sunlight. More cruisers rolled in. News vans followed, and a crowd thickened on the sidewalk. What began as one woman's humiliation was about to explode into a scandal too big to bury. Because Evelyn Carter, the woman they dismissed as a fraudster, wasn't just any grandmother. She was the mother of the Attorney General of the United States. The flashing lights of 3 additional police cruisers painted the walls of First National Bank red and blue. By now, the quiet suburban street looked like the scene of a major crime, though the only suspect stood calmly by the patrol car, pearls glinting against the sun, hands folded in front of her as though she were still at the front of a classroom. Evelyn Carter refused to bow. Across the street, neighbors gathered on stoops. Cars slowed to rubberneck. Cell phones rose above heads like a sea of periscopes. Everyone wanted a piece of the unfolding story. An elderly black woman accused of stealing her own money. Officer Bradley Cole's radio crackled again. The voice of Chief Reynolds was sharper now, rattling with urgency. "Cole, Hale, confirm immediately. Do you have Evelyn Carter in custody?" Cole stiffened. "Affirmative. Release her. Now." Static buzzed. Cole glanced at Hale. "Chief, there's fraud suspicion." Manager flagged the account. A pause. Then Reynolds' voice came like thunder. "You fools, do you know who she is? That's the mother of Attorney General Lucas Carter." The words dropped like a stone in water, sending ripples of dread through both officers. Their arrogance faltered. Hale swallowed hard, looking back at Evelyn, who stood with quiet composure, watching them squirm. Inside the bank, Manager Susan Blake's face blanched as the information reached her ears. She backed away from the glass window, pulse hammering in her throat. She had summoned the police with the smug certainty of someone who thought she was protecting the bank's assets. Now she realized she had detonated her own career. Ryan, the young teller, shifted nervously, guilt creeping across his features. He had known something was off when he compared Evelyn's treatment to the white customer before her. Now it was undeniable. He whispered to himself, "God, what did we just do?" Outside, the evidence bag sat half-filled with Evelyn's belongings. Cole's hands shook slightly as he tried to zip it closed. Evelyn's steady gaze stopped him. "You can put those back where they belong," she said, her tone calm but unyielding. Hale muttered, "Ma'am, we were just following protocol." "Protocol?" Evelyn cut him off. "Your protocol tells you to humiliate a woman in public, break her photo frame, call her a criminal in front of her community? That's not protocol. That's prejudice dressed in uniform." A murmur ran through the crowd. Someone yelled, "That's Miss Carter. She taught my kids at Jefferson Elementary." Another voice, "She tutored me after school for free when I couldn't read." The bystanders weren't just spectators anymore. They were witnesses rallying to her side. Cole's radio barked again, this time with a voice far more commanding than the police chief's. "This is Attorney General Lucas Carter. Put my mother on the line." The crowd gasped. Reporters elbowed closer, cameras zooming. Hale fumbled with the radio before holding it toward Evelyn, like it burned his hand. Evelyn pressed the button with regal calm. "Lucas, I'm all right," she said, though the tremor in her voice betrayed the cost of her composure. Through the static, his voice carried a measured fury. "Stay exactly where you are. My plane is en route." Cole's knees felt weak. Hale's cocky smirk had vanished completely. Every cop on the scene now looked like a rookie caught cheating on the job. Minutes later, the first local news van screeched to a halt, antenna shooting skyward. A reporter with a microphone sprinted toward the yellow tape being hastily set up. "Mrs. Carter! Can you tell us what happened?" Evelyn lifted her chin, but didn't answer. Not yet. She wanted the full truth to come out in the right way, not just fragments shouted across asphalt. Inside the bank, Susan tried to regain control, cornering Ryan at his teller window. "Say nothing," she hissed. "You saw how suspicious she was acting." Ryan shook his head. "Suspicious?" She handed over valid ID and a bank card. "She's been a customer longer than I've been alive. The only suspicious thing was how you treated her." Susan's face flushed red. "Do you know what happens if headquarters finds out about this?" "They will," Ryan replied quietly. "They're probably watching the news already." Back outside, the atmosphere shifted as black SUVs with tinted windows rolled to the curb. Men in dark suits spilled out, earpieces glinting. They didn't flash badges. They didn't need to. Their presence screamed federal authority. A path cleared through the gawking crowd as they approached Evelyn. "Mrs. Carter," one of them said respectfully, "please come with us inside. We'll secure a private space until your son arrives." Evelyn shook her head. "No, I'll remain right here where everyone can see. What happened to me happens in silence too often. Today it won't." The agent hesitated, then nodded. He recognized a command when he heard one. Cole tried again, weakly. "Mrs. Carter, we didn't know." She turned on him with eyes blazing. "You shouldn't need to know who I am to treat me with dignity." The words hung heavy in the air. The cameras caught them. Social media lit up within minutes. Hashtags began to trend. "E-banking while black, injustice for Evelyn." By the time Lucas Carter's jet touched down at the nearest airfield, the story was national news. Commentators debated live. Some replayed shaky cell phone footage of Evelyn pressed against the patrol car. Others dug into her biography: beloved teacher, philanthropist, mother of the most powerful law enforcement official in the country. At the bank, panic spread like fire. The branch manager frantically phoned corporate, her voice breaking. "It's on every channel. The attorney general is coming here. What do we do?" "Damage control." The voice on the other end snapped. "Offer apologies. Offer anything. Just contain it until we decide how to spin it." But there was no containing it. The crowd outside had doubled, chants starting to rise. "Respect our elders! Respect our elders!" Evelyn sat calmly on the bench near the shattered remains of her photo frame, hands folded neatly in her lap. The embodiment of dignity. Around her swirled chaos, officers arguing, managers sweating, reporters shouting. But she sat steady. The quiet center of a storm she hadn't chosen yet now commanded. And high above the city, Lucas Carter fastened his seatbelt, jaw set like stone. The plane cut through clouds, carrying him toward the place where his mother's dignity had been ground into pavement, and where justice, his kind of justice, was about to descend. The private jet sliced through gray morning clouds and touched down on the tarmac with a screech of rubber against asphalt. Attorney General Lucas Carter did not wait for stairs to be rolled. His security detail had them ready before the wheels stopped moving. As he descended, tailored suit sharp against the wind, the gathered press at the airfield snapped photos, microphones thrust forward. He ignored every question. His mother came first. A black motorcade whisked him into the city. Streets blurred past as he scrolled through live footage on a tablet. Clip after clip replayed the same humiliation. His mother pinned to a patrol car, her purse emptied like stolen goods, her photo frame shattered on pavement. the sound of her steady voice, repeating, "I've banked here longer than you've been alive," played over and over. Lucas's jaw tightened with each repetition. When the SUVs finally turned onto Main Street, the scene outside First National Bank was chaos. Dozens of protesters had gathered spontaneously, their chants echoing off brick storefronts. Hand-painted signs waved in the air. "Respect our elders. Stop banking discrimination. Justice for Mrs. Carter." Satellite trucks lined the block. National networks had joined the local crews, their anchors speaking breathlessly into cameras. Lucas stepped out of the vehicle, flanked by his agents. The noise dulled as the crowd recognized him. Whispers turned to shouts. "That's him! It's the Attorney General!" Reporters surged forward, questions flying. "What action will you take? Is this a federal matter? What about the officers?" He raised a single hand, silencing them. "Later, not now." Inside the cordon, officers Bradley Cole and Marcus Hale stood stiffly, faces pale, while Chief Reynolds mopped sweat from his brow. Bank manager Susan Blake hovered near the door, lips pressed into a thin line, as if she still believed she had been right. Lucas walked past them all without a glance. His eyes searched only for Evelyn. She sat on a wooden bench near the shattered frame, pearls shining defiantly in the noon light. For the first time all morning, her composure cracked when she saw her son. She rose and Lucas crossed the distance in 3 long strides, embracing her carefully. "Mom," he whispered, "are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she replied, though her voice trembled. "But others won't be if this continues." He nodded once, then turned, face hardening into the mask of authority. "Chief Reynolds," he said evenly, "your department detained my mother on fraudulent grounds. Explain yourself." Reynolds stumbled. "Attorney General, we received a report from the bank." Lucas cut him off. "A report fueled by prejudice, not evidence. My mother presented valid ID, yet was treated like a criminal." He gestured to the crowd, to the cameras recording every word. "Do you realize what message this sends to every black elder walking into a bank today?" Reynolds opened his mouth, closed it again. He had no defense. Lucas turned his gaze on the officers. "Names. Hale, sir. Marcus Hale. Wary year. Bradley Cole," the other muttered. Lucas's voice sharpened. "You'll both provide full written statements to federal investigators by the end of today, effective immediately. You're relieved of duty pending review." The crowd erupted in cheers. The officers' faces drained of color. Next, Lucas's attention fell on Susan Blake. She tried to compose herself, smoothing her blazer, but her hands trembled. "Mr. Carter, we were simply enforcing policy." "Policy?" Lucas's voice cut like glass. "Your policy is to profile elderly black customers and call police when they attempt to access their own funds. That's not policy. That's discrimination." Susan faltered. "I save it for investigators," Lucas said coldly. "Because there will be a federal inquiry into this branch and into every complaint that's been buried under your watch." The bank's regional director had arrived by then, rushing through the doors, face flushed. "Attorney General Carter, please, let's move inside. We'll handle this privately." Lucas turned slowly, his voice carrying so everyone outside could hear. "Privately is how discrimination thrives. This will be handled publicly." Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras zoomed tighter. Every sentence was ammunition now. Inside the bank, Lucas demanded a conference room. His team set up within minutes. Laptops open, evidence being collected. Security footage played on a monitor, showing Evelyn standing calmly at the counter, Susan pointing her out to guards. The moment officers dragged her away, the images spoke louder than any defense. The regional director wrung his hands. "We regret this unfortunate misunderstanding." "Unfortunate?" Lucas shot back. "Unfortunate is a fender bender. This was deliberate humiliation. My mother's account shows over $1 million in assets, Yet your employees assumed she was a fraud. Why? Because of her age? Because of her race? Both? No one answered. Silence was damning enough. Evelyn watched from the corner, her hands folded in her lap. She didn't need to add a word. Her dignity filled the room. Lucas leaned forward, voice low but lethal. Here is what will happen. Every complaint of discriminatory treatment at this branch, and any other, will be turned over to the Department of Justice. My team will conduct a full civil rights investigation under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. If we find evidence of systemic bias, we will not stop at sanctions. We will pursue criminal charges against those responsible. The director's mouth opened, but no sound came. The cameras outside captured the tension bleeding through frosted glass. Protesters chanted louder, their voices seeping into the boardroom like an unstoppable tide. At that moment, Evelyn spoke, her voice calm but resonant. I could have shown you who I was, my titles, my credentials, the organizations I serve, but I chose not to, because no one should need power or connections to be treated with basic dignity. Her words landed heavier than any threat. Even Lucas, who had grown up watching his mother command classrooms with quiet authority, felt the weight settle in his chest. The regional director lowered his gaze. Susan Blake shifted uncomfortably, realizing her career had just ended. Ryan Mills, the teller, looked at Evelyn with something like shame and admiration combined. Lucas straightened, adjusting his suit jacket. This is no longer about one incident, it's about a pattern, and patterns can be changed, but not by silence, by action. Outside, when the chants rose higher, echoing down Main Street, news tickers across the nation lit up with headlines. Attorney General's mother, profiled at bank, federal investigation launched. Evelyn Carter had walked into First National Bank to withdraw money for her grandson's tuition. She had walked out the catalyst for a reckoning that neither the police nor the bank could contain. And as Lucas led his mother past the cameras, the chants following them like thunder. Everyone watching, on the street, on their phones, on national TV, understood the same truth. This was only the beginning. By the next morning, the story had eclipsed everything else on national news. Overnight, Evelyn Carter's name trended across every platform. Clips of her pressed against the patrol car played in endless loops. Her words, "You shouldn't need to know who I am to treat me with dignity," quoted like scripture. Commentators debated systemic bias in banking, police misconduct, and what it meant when the Attorney General's own mother wasn't spared humiliation. The phrase "banking while black" became a national headline. At First National Bank's headquarters in New York, the top-floor conference room buzzed with panic. CEO Richard Hanover, a man who had built his empire on charm and control, slammed his hand against the table. Who authorized police involvement? Who thought detaining the Attorney General's mother was a sound business decision? Executives shifted uncomfortably, eyes averted. The regional director stammered, "Sir, the branch manager flagged her account. She insisted the withdrawal was suspicious." Hanover's face darkened. Suspicious because she was elderly? Or because she was black? Silence filled the room. He adjusted his cufflinks with trembling fingers. "We're in free fall. Our stock is already down 10%, and it's only 9 a.m. Meanwhile, back in the small town, Lucas Carter convened a federal task force inside the very branch where it had begun. Bank employees filed past DOJ attorneys with laptops, each summoned for questioning. Ryan Mills, the teller, sat with hands folded, confessing his guilt. "I should have verified the account myself. She had valid ID. I didn't need to call my manager." Susan Blake was escorted to a separate room, her face ashen. She attempted to justify her choices, citing protocols and fraud prevention, but investigators pressed her with pointed questions. Why was Evelyn treated differently than the white man who withdrew nearly the same amount minutes before? Susan faltered, words collapsing under evidence. Outside, the crowd swelled. Former students of Evelyn gathered with handmade posters. Justice for Mrs. Carter. End banking discrimination. Chants reverberated. Dignity is a right. Dignity is a right. The town square transformed into a protest ground, its energy rippling outward through live broadcasts. By midday, Lucas faced a bank of microphones under the sweltering sun. "This isn't only about my mother," he told the nation. "This is about every citizen denied dignity because of bias, explicit or implicit. The Department of Justice is opening a formal investigation into First National Bank and into the conduct of officers involved." Reporters shouted over one another. "Will this extend to other banks? What about nationwide policy reforms?" Lucas held up a hand. "We follow the evidence, and right now, the evidence points to systemic failure." That evening, Evelyn sat in her living room, sipping tea as her son prepared briefing notes across the table. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from journalists, civil rights leaders, even former students. She declined most, speaking only to a local high school reporter. "This isn't about revenge," she said gently into the young girl's recorder. "It's about reform. If it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. That must change." The clip went viral. Viewers saw not just the victim of an outrage, but a dignified elder demanding justice for all. At First National's headquarters, Hanover watched the interview with clenched jaw. "She's good," he muttered. "Too good. Public opinion will crucify us." His communications chief suggested a public apology, perhaps a compensation offer. Hanover snapped. "Money won't fix this. They want blood." And blood was exactly what Lucas intended to draw. Corporate blood. Within 48 hours, DOJ investigators had uncovered at least 27 similar complaints across First National branches, each involving elderly or minority customers subjected to harsher scrutiny. Many had been quietly settled with non-disclosure agreements. The pattern was undeniable. Hanover was summoned to Washington for a closed-door meeting, but Lucas refused to keep it closed. The Senate Banking Committee announced a public hearing. The marble chamber buzzed with cameras on hearing day. Senators lined the dais, papers stacked high. Evelyn sat quietly in the audience, pearls at her ears, her son's presence beside her, both personal and professional. Reporters swarmed every hallway. When Richard Hanover finally took the witness seat, sweat gleamed on his forehead under the lights. He adjusted his tie, tried for a confident smile, but his eyes darted nervously. Senator Claudia Morales opened bluntly. "Mr. Hanover, your bank's documents show targeted scrutiny of minority customers. Was this official policy?" "Absolutely not," Hanover said quickly. "These were isolated misinterpretations of fraud prevention guidelines." Morales lifted a memo. "This document from your executive team refers explicitly to demographic risk factors. Please explain that." Hanover's voice faltered. "That language, was taken out of context." Evelyn watched, expression composed. The man who had once commanded boardrooms now floundered before a nation. Senator Morales continued. "Isn't it true your bank settled at least 27 discrimination complaints last year without implementing systemic reform?" Hanover's silence was answer enough. Cameras captured his downfall in real time. Outside, protesters gathered on the Capitol steps, chanting Evelyn's name. Community leaders demanded accountability. Civil rights organizations filed amicus briefs. Social media exploded with calls for boycotts. First National Bank's stock plunged another 12%. Major investors began to flee. In the days that followed, dominoes fell fast. Susan Blake was terminated for violating customer dignity protocols. Officers Cole and Hale were placed on administrative leave. Leaked body cam footage from prior incidents suggested a pattern of selective enforcement. The regional director resigned under pressure, but Evelyn insisted it wasn't enough. Sitting across from Lucas one night, she clasped his hand. "We can't just punish individuals. We have to change the system itself. Otherwise, the next Evelyn Carter will still be humiliated. just without cameras to catch it. Lucas nodded. Then we go bigger. Legislation, nationwide reform. Together, they began drafting proposals, anonymous transaction reviews that hid demographic details from initial scrutiny, mandatory training against implicit bias, independent customer advocates in every branch. Lucas convened a task force, Evelyn lending decades of financial expertise from her years as CFO. Their partnership, mother and son, elder and attorney general, captured the nation's imagination. At First National headquarters, Hanover faced a board revolt. Investors demanded his resignation. "You've cost us billions in market value," one director seethed. "And more importantly, you've cost us our reputation." Hanover's charm failed him now. Within a week, he was forced out, his golden parachute slashed by clawback provisions. Meanwhile, Evelyn's quiet strength turned her into an unlikely national figure. She spoke at community meetings, urging reforms not just in banking, but in policing. Respect shouldn't depend on power or connections, she told a church packed with congregants. It should be the baseline for every human interaction. Applause thundered. Her face appeared on magazine covers. Editorials hailed her as the woman who shook American banking. Universities invited her to lecture. Civil rights leaders called her a moral compass. Yet Evelyn remained grounded, tutoring children at the local community center, pouring tea at her kitchen table, pearls always in place. Lucas carried the fight into Congress. A draft bill, the Financial Dignity Act, emerged, mandating nationwide standards for fair treatment in financial institutions. Bipartisan support grew under public pressure. Banks scrambled to implement reforms preemptively, hoping to avoid the fate of First National. For Susan Blake, life turned upside down. Her name became synonymous with prejudice in viral hashtags. She struggled to find work, her resume a scarlet letter. Officers Cole and Hale faced disciplinary boards, their careers hanging by a thread. Hanover disappeared from public view, a once powerful titan reduced to a cautionary tale. Evelyn, meanwhile, became the movement's reluctant matriarch. At one rally, she addressed the crowd directly. "This isn't about one bank, one officer, or even one law. It's about whether we, as a nation, choose to value every citizen equally. Dignity is not negotiable." Her words rippled through the crowd like fire, sparking chants that carried into the night. By the time the Senate Banking Committee reconvened weeks later, momentum was unstoppable. Testimonies poured in from across the country. Seniors denied withdrawals. Immigrants scrutinized unfairly. Minority families rejected for loans, despite excellent credit. Patterns emerged too clear to ignore. And through it all, Evelyn sat quietly in her pearls, living proof that even in humiliation, dignity could seed a revolution. This was no longer simply Evelyn Carter's story. It had become America's. Months passed, but the shock waves of Evelyn Carter's humiliation did not fade. Instead, they hardened into momentum. The nation that had first watched in disbelief now demanded change. The words "banking while black" no longer referred only to Evelyn's ordeal. They had become a rallying cry stitched into banners, hashtags, and legislative proposals. On Capitol Hill, the Senate Banking Committee chamber was filled to capacity. Marble columns towered above. Cameras clicked incessantly, and anticipation hung thick in the air. Attorney General Lucas Carter sat at the witness table, stacks of evidence spread before him. Beside him, Evelyn occupied a front row seat, pearls gleaming as if defying the chandeliers to shine brighter. The chair, Senator Morales, struck her gavel. "This hearing will now come to order. We are here to discuss the passage of the Financial Dignity Act." For hours, testimonies echoed through the chamber. Victims told their stories. A grandmother denied access to her savings because her accent was suspicious. A war veteran questioned for withdrawing disability checks. A small business owner of color repeatedly refused loans despite perfect credit. Each account mirrored Evelyn's experience, yet carried its own weight of pain. Senators leaned forward, faces grave. When Evelyn's turn came, she stood slowly, her voice steady as the nation leaned closer. I came to my bank that day to withdraw tuition money for my grandson. Instead, I was treated as though my very existence was fraudulent. My dignity shattered on the hood of a police car while strangers filmed. I could have presented my credentials, my years as a CFO, my service on financial boards, but I chose not to, because dignity should not require titles. It should not require connections. It should be given freely to every customer, in every bank, every time. The chamber was silent. Even the reporters stopped scribbling. Evelyn's words hung in the air like scripture carved into stone. By the end of that week, the Financial Dignity Act passed with rare bipartisan support. The law mandated anonymous transaction reviews, where names, photos, and demographic data were hidden during initial verification. It required every bank branch to appoint a customer dignity officer with real authority. Quarterly audits were made public. Bias training became mandatory. And most importantly, federal penalties for violations were sharpened into teeth strong enough to pierce any corporate armor. Evelyn Carter watched the president sign the bill into law on a spring afternoon, sunlight glinting off the fountain pens lined across the resolute desk. Lucas stood beside him. But when the cameras clicked, it was Evelyn's face that led every front page. The grandmother once humiliated now symbolized victory. Back in her small town, life resumed with surprising normalcy. Evelyn still shopped at the same grocery store, still tutored children at the community center, still sipped her tea by the window each evening. But subtle changes spoke volumes. At the renovated branch of First National, customers of every age and color moved freely, greeted warmly. Transactions were swift, professional, equal. A plaque in the lobby read, "Dignity and respect for every customer," inspired by Evelyn Carter. She ran her fingers over the engraving one morning, a quiet smile lifting her lips. Officer Bradley Cole and Marcus Hale were no longer in uniform. After lengthy hearings, their terminations were upheld, pensions revoked. They took security jobs at strip malls, their names forever tied to a case study in bias. Susan Blake, the former branch manager, faded from financial circles entirely. She attempted to restart her career at smaller institutions, but her name was poison. Eventually, she found work at a local community center, teaching financial literacy classes, ironically under programs created by the Carter Foundation. Some called it redemption, others called it consequence. As for First National, under new leadership, the bank became a model of reform. Shareholders who once feared losses discovered profits rising. Inclusive banking expanded their customer base. Loyalty deepened. Lawsuits dwindled. The lesson was written in the ledgers. Dignity was good business. Evelyn never sought celebrity, but it came anyway. She was invited to speak at universities, corporate conferences, civil rights galas. Harvard Business School published a case study titled The Carter Effect. Police academies across the nation studied her incident as mandatory curriculum. Business schools debated the ethical failures that led to her humiliation and the reforms born from it. Yet Evelyn always returned to her modest kitchen, pouring tea for neighbors, telling stories to grandchildren, reminding everyone that change is not made by celebrities. It is made by ordinary people demanding better. "I was just a woman trying to pay for her grandson's tuition," she often said. "And look what we built together." Her grandson Daniel, now thriving in college under the scholarship she had nearly been denied funding, called her one evening. "Grandma," he said, excitement bubbling in his voice, "my professor assigned a reading about you. Our whole class studied your case today." Evelyn chuckled softly. "Then maybe you listen more closely than you ever did when I helped with your math homework." Actually, 2 years after the incident, Evelyn sat in the audience of a packed auditorium as the president announced the signing of the National Financial Inclusion Act, a sweeping law expanding the principles of the Financial Dignity Act across all financial services, credit, loans, mortgages. Lucas stood at the podium, but his eyes sought his mother in the crowd. "This moment belongs to her," he said, voice thick with pride. The applause thundered. Later, walking home past the very sidewalk where she had once been forced against a police car, Evelyn paused. The pavement had been replaced, a small community garden blooming where the photo frame had shattered. She bent to touch a rosebud, whispering to her late husband's memory. "We did good, James. We turned pain into progress." At her desk, Evelyn began writing her memoir. The title came easily, Banking on Dignity, How One Moment Changed the Nation. Publishers fought for rights, but Evelyn insisted the proceeds fund scholarships. "Change must seed the next generation," she explained. The story of Evelyn Carter was no longer just hers. It belonged to a nation that had watched, outraged, and then acted. It belonged to every elder who now walked into a bank with shoulders straighter, every child who now believed dignity was not a privilege, but a right. And as cameras rolled on one last interview, Evelyn faced the lens directly, her pearl necklace catching the light. Dignity isn't negotiable. Justice delayed isn't always justice denied. Sometimes it leads to lasting reform, but reform only comes if we demand it, loudly and together. The host asked, "Mrs. Carter, what would you say to people watching at home?" She smiled. "Document everything. Share your story. Never accept silence as the price of survival. And remember, you are worth respect." The screen faded, but the words remained. Did Evelyn's journey move you? This is not just her story. It's a story of every person who has ever faced bias, and of how one moment can transform entire systems. If you believe dignity is a right, not a privilege, show your support, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss more powerful stories like this. And don't just watch, join the conversation. Drop a comment below. Have you ever seen or experienced bias in everyday life? How did you respond? Your voice matters. Awareness is only the first step. Action is the next.